We hadn't been up for 15 minutes, and all of a sudden, boom! Silence. And we caught fire immediately. We lost our engine immediately. And not only the engine, the electrical, hydraulics, we lost everything. And the fire started to come in. Bobby's screaming that he's burning. So we're at about 1,500 feet, 1,400 feet. And I said, we need air. I opened my front left canopy. All that did was feed the fire, and the fire just enveloped both of us. The entire cockpit was in flame. I was born into the Army. My father was a World War II Korean War and Vietnam veteran. He served 31 years in the Field Artillery. I grew up in the military environment and enjoyed it. I went to high school. I went to school all over the United States, and I went to high school in France. So that's a pretty good start in life. Go to high school in Paris, France. How many people can do that? So I enjoyed that. I went to college at Texas A&M University, and I went there strictly to obtain a commission in the United States Army. I was planning to be a career officer ever since high school. So I completed Texas A&M in 1970, graduated, and I went into my officer basic course. I was a field artillery officer on active duty, but I was also obligated to go to flight school because I went through the ROTC flight program. In January of 1971, I went to my officer basic course at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. Went to Fort Walters, Texas, where I went through officer primary helicopter school in the TH-55 helicopter. And I really enjoyed that. Because I went to school in Texas, I felt like I was right at home. So once we completed that, we went to Fort Rucker, Alabama for our advanced helicopter training, which we did instrument training. We did contact training and to learn how to fly the UH-1 helicopter, which was the basic workhorse of the Army. When I went to flight school, everybody went through helicopter training. They were going through helicopter pilots in Vietnam like butter, and so they needed replacements. And so I had no doubt that once I completed helicopter training, I was going to Vietnam.
So let's talk about that moment arriving in Vietnam. Tell me about it, the weather, the sights, the smells. What impressed you when you landed?
What impressed me, it was very, very hot. It was very, very humid. You broke out into a sweat as soon as you got off the airplane. We're all in our lightweight TW uniforms, and it was instant sweat as soon as you walked down the ramp. What really stuck with me was riding in. We got on a bus to ride to a in-processing center. And as you drive around, the bus had like wire on the windows. It was like a chain link fence on all the windows. So, and I've tried to figure out what that was all about. And the guy goes, grenades. So grenades don't get in the bus and go off. They hit the screen and bounce out. So that plus when we got into a civilian part of the country, all the structures that I could see, there were so many just old tin roofs, and they were rusted and just pieces of metal that don't even match, covering the tops of the roofs, and I was just amazed. I mean, my father, I spent a couple of tours in Europe. I went to high school in France and never saw anything like that. So that was quite shocking.
And as you understood it, what was your unit's mission once you guys, got off the bus, once you guys got processed, and then were you sent to like a forward operating base or a major base or?
No, I actually stayed in, they called it Camp Alpha, which is right there in Saigon. I stayed there for a couple of days until they decided which unit that I was going to. I don't know how they made those decisions. All I knew is I was a Cobra rated commissioned officer, and so there were limited. I couldn't go to just any helicopter unit. I had to go like aerial Field Artillery unit or to an air cavalry unit where they had Cobra helicopters. So I just sat there and waited. I wanted to go to the first cav. I ended up in the first cav, so I was very happy.
And what kind of helicopters, just to be clear, were you flying at that point?
It's an AH-1G Cobra attack helicopter. It was built strictly as an attack helicopter. It was the first helicopter to be built just as an attack helicopter. The tandem seating, front and back seat, fully closed canopy, just like a jet, a fighter jet. So it had air conditioning because it was a closed canopy. That was a nice feature in Vietnam. It was a very unique helicopter. I decided that if I was going to go to Vietnam and get shot at, I wanted to be in something that could shoot back. And this could do the job.
Tell me about the armament on that aircraft, and maybe, for someone who might not be tuned into military helicopters, was there anything special about it that you considered special?
Well, what was special about it is it had a lot of weapons on it. There were multiple configurations that you could put on that aircraft, from the 2.75-inch folding fin aerial rocket. It had 7.62 millimeter miniguns, had a 40 millimeter grenade launcher, automatic. The miniguns were 2,000 or 4,000 rounds per minute you could fire. The rockets, they went on the rocket pods and the wing stores, and you had 18-shot rocket pods and 7-shot rocket pods. So you had indoor pods, and which were normally the heavier pods, which were the 18-shot rocket pods, and M200, I think it was called, and then they had M158 pods, which were the 7-shot rocket pods on the outboard.
Tell me about your first combat mission, and I guess in as much detail as you care to go into. What were you thinking?
Well, every day I went out to fly was a combat mission because I was assigned to an air cavalry troop. And our mission was to go out and fly and find the enemy, report it back to the headquarters. So I concentrated on trying to learn from the experienced aircraft commander that I was flying with. Cobra's a two-person helicopter. You have an aircraft commander who is a rated pilot in the back seat. He flies the aircraft and controls the wing stores, all the rocket firing. Then you have a front seat who is also a rated pilot, and he has controls up there that he can fly the aircraft, and he has switches that he could take over, and he could fire rockets, and he could fire machine gun and 40 millimeter. Either seat could do that. But the aircraft commander sat in the back, and he's the guy that has all the experience. He's been there probably in country 5 or 6 months already, and he's now the aircraft commander, and I'm a pilot.
Take me through that mission where you got shot down.
So an air cav troop, when it goes out on a mission, we're configured. We have one command and control ship. It's a UH-1 Huey. Usually have 3 UH-1s that have 8. We had ARVN troops as our blues platoon. They were called Browns. They were ready reaction to go in on any downed aircraft that might happen. Then we'd probably take 2 sets of Cobras, which would be 2 Cobras at each team. So there's 4 Cobras, and then we'd take 3 OH-6 Little Birds with us, and we would go out. That day I was flying with Bobby Reinhardt. He was a CW2, experienced. He's probably about 7 or 8 years older than I am, and had probably about 10 or 11 years in the Army. Very experienced pilot, and so I felt confident that you know, in good hands. We're going to go out and find the bad guys. When I first got in country, we were flying right on top of the trees because we didn't have IR suppression kits. And they had lost a lot of Cobras. In the months of the Easter Offensive of 1972, they'd lost a lot of Cobra helicopters to SA-7 heat-seeking missiles. So when I got there, they were retrofitting all the aircraft with IR suppression kits so we could fly at altitude. Did most of my flying before this right on top of the treetops at 150 miles an hour. Flying circles around a little bird in the middle, trying to protect him and to react if he got shot at. But now we're flying at altitude, and so it was a little uneasy. The clouds were low. The clouds were at about 2,000 feet. And we're flying at about 1,800 feet below that, which puts you in the range for a SA-7 heat-seeking missile. It also puts you in range for all their heavier anti-aircraft weapons, the 51 caliber, 23 millimeter, and those were the biggest threats to us. We're just out of range of their small arms, just the rifles, or AK-47s. So Buffalo Bob flies down what they call trolling. He goes down in his Cobra and he just goes through at about 100 miles an hour, or 100 knots, on top of the trees, trolling to see if there's any bad guys down there. He didn't take any fire, so he came back up and he put the little bird on the trees. So he's just going down to make sure we're not putting the little bird into a hornet's nest. So the little bird's down on the bottom, and we get into a racetrack pattern where we're flying about 180 degrees out from each other at about 1,800 feet, in a big circular pattern, and so that both the aircraft can keep an eye on the little bird. We're flying around and around, and I'm waiting for something to happen, because I'd been in this position before, the first time I got shot. It was just a weird, eerie feeling that day. It comes with being close to the Cambodian border. When you're flying on a mission in Vietnam at that time, there are no good guys on the ground. When you get shot down, you're in bad trouble if your immediate guys you're flying with can't come and get you. But our mission is to protect that little bird. So, and I'm, as the co-pilot gunner, I'm supposed to be taking, notes on whatever he's finding down there. We had been up for 15 minutes or 20 minutes, and all of a sudden, boom! Silence. We were in complete I need a drink.
Take your time, sir.
I have to tell you, I don't talk about this often.
I understand.
So we had that big bang, and we had absolute silence, which was just eerie as could be. Because prior to that, there was a lot of rotor blade noise and a lot of engine noise and a lot of communication traffic on 3 different radios, because the little bird was reporting a lot of activity, and it was eerie because all that noise went away, and all of a sudden it's like, what's going on? Well, we knew what was going on. I mean, we got hit, and we didn't know with what. We knew it was big because the aircraft shook, and we could see the flames outside the canopy. The aircraft was on fire. And we caught fire immediately. We lost our engine immediately. We lost not only the engine, the electrical, hydraulics. We lost everything. We couldn't even talk to each other. We had to yell back and forth in the canopy. And Bobby, being an experienced pilot, entered auto rotation, yelling back and forth, we don't have hydraulics. Our hydraulic reservoir, which is about 18 inches behind his head on the other side of a thin firewall, exploded. Burned into the cockpit with us. The cockpit started filling with smoke and fumes and fire. The fire started to come in. Bobby's screaming that he's burning. I can't see Bobby. He's back behind me. We have a instrument console in between us. So he says, "Help me get on the controls." And so I put my sight away, grabbed my little short controls I have in the front, and we are trying to slow the aircraft down. We were doing about 120 knots when we got hit. Well, the airspeed for auto rotation is 80 knots. So we're trying to slow this thing down. We're heading towards the only clearing that we can see is a arc light, scarred terrain in the middle of the jungle where they dropped 108 500-pound bombs. And that's what an arc light consists of from B-52s. So we could see that. So that's the only place that we could see where there might be a flat terrain for us to land.
Every day, our nation's heroes fight battles long after the front lines. At the Purple Heart Foundation, we stand beside them, providing the assistance they need. From critical assistance grants that ease the burden of unexpected challenges, to life-changing service dog training that restores independence and confidence. We invest in their futures through scholarships for veterans and their families. And we're here with mental health resources because no hero should face the darkness alone. Join us in honoring their sacrifice by transforming their lives at purpleheartfoundation.org. Because they served us, it's our turn to serve them.
So we're now fighting, trying to get control of the aircraft, but we're also fighting, trying to breathe. We can't breathe. It is toxic. We're coughing our guts out. So we're at about 1,500 feet, 1,400 feet. And I said, we need air. I opened my front left canopy. You're not supposed to open them above 60 knots or it's going to rip off. I don't care. I need fresh air. All that did was feed the fire, and the fire just enveloped both of us. The entire cockpit was in flame. And I was going to jump. I was going to undo my seatbelt and jump. And I said, "I'm going. I'm jumping." Bobby opened his canopy, and as soon as he opened his canopy, it's on the back right, it created a cross draft of 100-knot wind. And it just took all the fire and all the smoke right out the back. And we go, "Buckle up." So we decided to buckle back up, and we're going to ride this puppy in. So now we can breathe. We're not getting burned anymore. Bobby got burned bad. But we now have to get control of this aircraft and get it on the ground. We're heading in the right direction. We're still trying to slow this thing down. We knew we were doing in excess of 100 knots. We need to get it back to 80. And the bad thing is, at the very bottom, we need to pull back on that cyclic some more and to do a little flare action to slow down from doing 80 knots to, you know, something like 30 or 40 knots before we can touch down and cushion with our collective. And we are just straining with all of our might to slow this thing down. We finally can feel that we're slowing it down, but we're not gonna have anything at the bottom. So we have really no control of where we're gonna set this thing down. We're just heading for that arc light area and hope we don't hit trees. But we were going in fast, and we were pulling on both controls, both of us, as hard as we can to try to get it to slow down. Otherwise, we figured it's going to be instant death if we hit it 70 or 80 miles an hour. And what do we hit? We don't know. We're going to hit wherever we hit because we don't have that control. So we're pulling with all of our might, and then all of a sudden the ground is right there. I let go of the controls at that point and did this, just try to cover my face, and that's all I remember. I was knocked unconscious. So I could have been dead. All I knew is there was nothing. I mean, I was knocked out. Everything I'm going to tell you now is what was told to me later by Bobby and Buffalo Bob and Wally, who were flying the other two aircraft, the Little Bird and the other Cobra, which they told me later because they were out. The other Cobra and the Little Bird were out flying and shooting the bad guys who were trying to come and get us. Bobby tells me later that he's out of the aircraft and he's going, "Where's Bruce?" And there's no Bruce. When our aircraft hit, the skid spread, flattened it, hit the ground, bounced upside down, cut the tail boom off with the rotor, and landed upside down. And I assume I was knocked out when we initially hit the ground. So Bobby gets out, and there's no Bruce, and he looks back at the aircraft and sees me hanging upside down, my face is covered in blood. So he assumes I'm dead, but he's not going to leave my body there to burn. So he came back. Now we're on fire. We have a full load of ammunition, rockets, 40 millimeter, and minigun. So we're upside down in the fire where it was on the top. Now it's on the bottom, and it's burning up towards all that ammunition. Bobby comes down and cuts me out of my seat belt, out of my seat, drags me out of the aircraft, and I don't know if he was going to drag me all the way back to the rescue aircraft or whatever he was going to do, but I started to come to, and moaning and groaning, and then he goes, "Oh, you're alive." Oh, he goes, so he stops and he picks me up, and so I'm standing there, and all of a sudden and everything else is still not totally there. I just know that I'm running and Bobby's dragging me. I fall, Bobby picks me up, we run some more. We could hear the rescue helicopter, we could hear the rotor blades of the engine, but we couldn't see it. We had jungle, not real big, thick jungle, but we had jungle trees. And we took the right path, I guess, because all of a sudden, we busted out into a little clearing, and there's George Hewlett in his UH-1H sitting there waiting for us. And we were so happy. So we run over to the aircraft and we climb on board. The crew chief gunner pulls us on board. The first thing I did was run up and give George a big hug. And I started smoking when first time I got wounded in Vietnam, and so I grabbed a cigarette and I first lit a cigarette. They took off. The other Cobra with Buffalo, I think they fired up some rockets on our Cobra to make sure it burned up and blew up, and we did hear some stuff cooking off as we were running away from it. I'm glad Bobby came back and got me when he did, because it'd been much longer, I'd have probably gotten caught and all that. So it was a pretty traumatic day. They flew us back to Lai Khe, where we were staging out of, and another aircraft took us down to. We switched into another Huey, and they flew us down to Saigon, where the 3rd Field Hospital is, and which is where we got taken care of.